What's going on, guys? Dare here with Fantasy Football Advice, coming at you with another fantasy football video. Today, we got a good one for you guys. In today's video, we are going over 4 wide receivers in the later rounds that have a ton of upside that you should be targeting. As you know, when targeting players in the later rounds, we care absolutely nothing about a player's floor. We're shooting for nothing but upside here, so even if a player in the later rounds has a very low percent chance of actually hitting, that does not disqualify them from being a great target in the later rounds. In fact, we can actually benefit from drafting players that right out of the gate either bust so we know we can drop them, making room for another addition off of the waiver wire for a player with potentially more upside, as opposed to drafting a player who's putting up mediocre production, just enough to remain on our bench, but not enough to feel comfortable in starting them. In today's video, we'll go over 4 wide receivers that fit that bill to a T, but before we do, just a quick shout out and reminder that if you do enjoy these videos, show your support by hitting that like button. It doesn't seem like much, but each like goes a long way in helping grow the channel. As you know, we're on the road to 100,000 subscribers. Our goal is to hit that by the start of the NFL season, so if you are somebody that does watch our content regularly and enjoys, consider hitting that subscribe button today. Also, guys, our draft packages are available now, so if you want access to our rankings, our sleepers, our targets, our busts, risk ratings, individual video player breakdowns, access to our private Discord community, and more, consider signing up and becoming a member at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. Link, as always, in the description box below. With all of that being said, though, let's hop over to our stat of the day. Yesterday's stat of the day was which wide receiver tied DeAndre Hopkins and DJ Moore with a league-leading 6 receptions of 40-plus yards or more. The correct answer was Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Congratulations to Sawyer Hebbs, who was the first to get this right on YouTube. And as for Twitter, at LuckXGamble. Once again, congratulations to both of you. But as for today's stat of the day, which wide receiver led the league with 9 interceptions caused when being targeted? Once again, that's which wide receiver led the league with 9 interceptions caused when being targeted. Leave your answer in the comment section down below. We'll be happy to let you know who wins in tomorrow's video. Alright guys, without further ado, let's hop right into the video, and as per usual, we'll begin with the player listed on the thumbnail, Mike Williams of the LA Chargers. Right off the bat, just want to say that I understand why a lot of people could be turned off to Mike Williams being on this list. Admittedly, Mike Williams throughout his career has been a bit of a disappointment, to say the least. I know it's been several years now since he's been drafted, but we can't forget that Mike Williams is actually a first-round talent. Not only that, he was drafted with the 7th overall pick, so expectations for Mike Williams right out of the gate were extremely high. Needless to say, he has not lived up to those expectations whatsoever. This can be highlighted by his career high in targets in any given season being 90, which is pretty surprising considering the amount of passing volume that this team has had while he's been on the roster. Due to his lack of production and largely being a disappointment for anyone who drafted him in years past, I can understand why some people may just not be interested in taking him whatsoever regardless of circumstances. But if you hear me out, I'll make a case for why Mike Williams could potentially have a breakout season in 2021, and with his current ADP being outside of the top 50, you won't be required to assume that much risk in order to see that through. So if I'm making a case for a potential Mike Williams breakout for the 2021 season, the first place I'd start would be on his pass production. Most people, when looking at Mike Williams' pass production, will see a wide receiver who has never finished inside the top 30, a receiver whose best fantasy season was on the back of 43 receptions for 664 receiving yards, but carried to a wide receiver 32 finish on the back of 10 receiving touchdowns. Although he did finish as the wide receiver 32 in that season, owning him definitely didn't paint the exact picture of his end of season stats. A player getting most of his production from touchdowns alone is going to have massive week-to-week volatility, so although at the end of the season he did finish as a flex type starter, I'm sure owning him was a completely different story. Regardless of how valuable he was for fantasy in the 2018 season, the reason I bring up his stat line of 660 receiving yards and 10 touchdowns was to highlight that Mike Williams does have the capability of being a superior threat in the red zone, being the type of player who can put up double-digit touchdowns. Very few receivers in the league do each and every season, so for Mike Williams in just his second year as a pro to be able to put up double-digit touchdowns, whether he's a lock to repeat that type of production or not, we do have to acknowledge that it is within his range of outcomes. Now, on the flip side, we've also seen Mike Williams perform to the complete opposite end of the spectrum. In 2019, on the back of 49 receptions, Mike Williams put up a stat line of 1,001 receiving yards to go along with 2 receiving touchdowns. So in 2018, we saw with a similar amount of receptions, receptions, we're talking 43 versus 49, Mike Williams went from 660 receiving yards all the way up to 1,000, but saw a massive reduction in touchdowns, dropping from 10 all the way down to 2 receiving touchdowns the following year. Once again, the reason we're bringing this up is to show the type of production that Mike Williams has within his range of outcomes. We had seen in 2018 a player who was a superior red zone threat, a threat to score from any area of the field. Fast forward to the 2019 season, we have a superior deep threat outside wide receiver, 49 receptions, over 1,000 receiving yards, posting an incredible stat line of over 20 yards per reception. While he's severely disappointed in the touchdown department, something that was a strength of his just a season before that, admittedly, it is one of the most frustrating facts about Mike Williams, but it also is one of the things that adds to his potential upside. Mike Williams, we've seen him produce like some of the best wide receivers in the league in certain areas in different seasons. Unfortunately, though, he hasn't had that one season where he's been able to put it all together. Regardless, though, he's still only 26 years old, typically the age where receivers are starting to enter their prime, so we can't count him out 100%, and if there ever were a season for him to potentially put it all together, there's no reason why 2021 can't be that season. If you think about it, Justin Herbert, coming off of a phenomenal rookie season, a record-breaking rookie season, the LA Chargers ranked top 5 in passing volume last season, a trend that's likely to continue heading into 2021, and with Justin Herbert as just a rookie being able to pass for over 30 touchdowns, there is a very strong chance that another receiver outside of Keenan Allen is going to be fantasy relevant, and considering that Hunter Henry did leave to free agency, vacating 93 targets in this passing offense, a big-bodied receiver like Mike Williams could certainly be the outlet that Justin Herbert looks to fill the void of the vacated role previously filled by the big-bodied Hunter Henry. So just to summarize, Mike Williams in years past has proven to be a deep threat wide receiver, posting over 1,000 receiving yards on under 50 receptions. Williams in a separate season has also proven to be a superior red zone weapon, a threat to score from any area of the field, although he's never been able to put together a season where he's coupled both of those strengths of his. Heading into 2021, that's definitely within his range of outcomes. Justin Herbert heading into his second season provides a lot of promise for this passing offense. The LA Chargers offense ranked top 5 in passing volume last season, a trend likely to continue for the 2021 campaign. And with this team losing Hunter Henry, another big-bodied receiver in this offense who vacated over 90 targets, Mike Williams is going to be first in line at an increased opportunity share for the 2021 season. Alright guys, we're moving on to the next wide receiver, and the next player we have is Elijah Moore of the New York Jets. Now, if you guys have not been hearing any buzz out of camp, I recommend you guys go to Twitter, watch some clips from OTA. Elijah Moore is getting glowing reports with each passing day. In fact, the hype is becoming so real with Elijah Moore that I'm starting to believe he may not even be a late round pick by the time drafts roll around. Currently though, Elijah Moore is being drafted right around that wide receiver 60 range. Fantasy Pros does have him listed outside of the top 70, but if you're looking for a true estimate of about where he's being valued currently, I would look to Underdog, which has the paid best ball leagues, so the more competitive leagues considering the money is actually on the line. On the Underdog platform, Elijah Moore is currently the wide receiver 58, and he is climbing by the day. Just to give you guys a little bit more background on Elijah Moore, he's a slot wide receiver out of Ole Miss. He is on the smaller side, listed at 5'9.5", 179 pounds. Think the same size and build as a player like Tyler Lockett or John Brown, but Elijah Moore, like I had mentioned, he makes up most of his production out of the slot. He is most known for his superior route running ability, his short area quickness. He's the type of player that can easily change tempo mid-route, allowing him to consistently throw off his defenders. And for a receiver with a smaller frame, he's a pretty tough dude. He is not afraid of contact. He's not going to allow contact to be the reason he doesn't come down with the football. He has very strong hands, so expect those contested catches to likely be going in his favor. And if we're talking about his breakaway speed, this is something he certainly brings to the table, as seen by his 93rd percentile 40-yard dash time, clocking in with a 4.40. As for weaknesses, the only real knock that can be given to him definitely has to be his size. His limited catch radius could potentially be a factor if we're talking strictly red zone production, an area where bigger bodied, taller receivers with a larger catch radius do have an advantage. Regardless though, we've already mentioned other receivers like Tyler Lockett and John Brown, two receivers who we've seen in years past produce like wide receiver ones. Elijah Moore and his lack of size should not be a reason you avoid him on draft day. Elijah Moore finds himself on the New York Jets offense, already making a name for himself in OTAs. Credit to the New York Jets offseason offseason program, they've been releasing steady updates on the progress of their wide receivers, most notably Denzel Mims not working out with the first team offense, Jamison Crowder still playing a key role in this offense but moved a bit to an outside position. Then we have Elijah Moore, the receiver who presumably can do no wrong. The coaching staff has been very vocal about how well he's been progressing. The best part though is that we don't even need to take their word for it. There are numerous clips out there of the Jets OTAs in which you can see Elijah Moore in full effect, living up to all of the hype brought upon him. I'll tell you right now, if there's only one receiver on the New York Jets offense that I'm going to be targeting, it's easily going to be Elijah Moore. And for those of you out there that just want to avoid all New York Jets players as a whole, you're definitely doing yourself a disservice. While the New York Jets offense is in no way guaranteed to be successful, if the New York Jets team as a whole is bad and they're behind by 2-3 scores in the third and fourth quarter consistently, this team is going to be loaded with garbage time production. Garbage time points count just as much as any other fantasy points, and if you owned Jamison Crowder last year, a player who was no stranger to putting up 20-point fantasy days as the starter for the Jets while healthy, then you know firsthand that there is plenty of fantasy value to go around even on these bad teams. Alright guys, we're moving over to the next player, and the next wide receiver in today's video is Marvin Jones of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Unlike the New York Jets, we have a lot of questions when it comes down to how it's going to shake out for the wide receivers in the Jacksonville Jaguars offense. Currently, you have DJ Chark coming off the board as the wide receiver 30, Laviska Shenault coming off the board as the wide receiver 45, then Marvin Jones all the way down at the wide receiver 55. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you that ADP does not play a large factor into why we are fans of drafting Marvin Jones this year, but I mean, come on, how could it not? Marvin Jones is coming off the board as a wide receiver 5 this year. The risk you're going to take in order to get him on your team is virtually non-existent, and while I am a fan still of DJ Chark, I think he definitely has a pathway to succeed. In fact, I have pretty high hopes for all of the weapons in this offense, which is one of the reasons why I like targeting Marvin Jones. It largely comes down to the upgrade at the quarterback position, moving over to Trevor Lawrence. I could definitely see Trevor Lawrence in year one having a Joe Burrow-esque type rookie season, and what I mean by that is a decent amount of passing volume. I do know that they drafted Travis Etienne very early, and of course they have James Robinson, so a much better running back group than they've had for several years to say the least. Obviously the goal in that would be to alleviate some of the pressure from Trevor Lawrence, not forcing him to do too much in his rookie season so he can develop gradually while also keeping these defenses honest. As we know though, the run game can only take this team so far. The Jacksonville Jaguars in 2020 allowed the second most points in the entire league. If that is a trend that does continue for 2021, then we can definitely expect an uptick in second half passing volume. This was such a common occurrence in the 2020 season that by the end of it, the Jacksonville Jaguars actually finished with the 6th most pass attempts in the entire league. And while better quarterback play may allow the Jacksonville Jaguars not to be in as great of deficits when compared to last season, no matter how much of an upgrade we do give to Trevor Lawrence in year one, in all likeliness, the Jacksonville Jaguars will still be top 10 when it comes to passing volume for the 2021 season. For that, there is a lot to love about all of the receiving weapons in this offense. We've seen DJ Chark in years past produce, but we've also seen DJ Chark go down with injuries. Out of the 3 receivers, DJ Chark, Laviska Shenault, and Marvin Jones, I find myself the least taking DJ Chark. Chark, we saw last season, was battling injuries. Despite appearing in 13 games, he was mostly banged up through the majority of those, coming off of a season in 2019 where he finished as the wide receiver 15 in standard, 17 in PPR. He followed that up while appearing in 13 games as the wide receiver 49, with DJ Chark having the highest ADP out of all of these 3 receivers, also proving to be the least durable of each of the 3 receivers as well. It's a combination that not only has led me to avoid him in most of the drafts that I've done, but it has also been one of the contributing factors that have led me to draft other receivers in this offense like Laviska Shenault and Marvin Jones in the later rounds. While I do also love Laviska, it's undeniable that Marvin Jones presents an immense amount of value. Laviska Shenault has a very bright future. In Dynasty, I think he is a phenomenal player to target, but if I'm going for a one-year wonder, just looking at 2021, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if Marvin Jones was able to meet and possibly exceed the production of Laviska Shenault. As we know, Laviska Shenault is still a young and developing player. While his talent is undeniable, and I do foresee this team getting him involved in many aspects of his game, including potentially potentially end arounds in touches out of the backfield. That obviously will be an advantage not given to Marvin Jones, but one advantage that Marvin Jones has over all of these other receivers is the fact that he is a veteran with 9 NFL years of experience. He's played in different offenses, he's played with different quarterbacks, and Marvin Jones throughout his entire career has always been efficient. Even at 31 years old, it was clear last season that he still has some gas left in the tank. And if there just so happens to be an injury to DJ Chark, a receiver who plays a very similar role as Marvin Jones could see a massive uptick in volume and production. I wouldn't be surprised that if DJ Chark were to go down with an injury, Marvin Jones were to be producing top 30, top 25 numbers. But even without an injury to any of the receiving weapons in this offense, Marvin Jones should have absolutely no problem smashing his current ADP, which is all the way down at the wide receiver 55. I wouldn't be surprised right out of the gate for him to produce matchup-based flex type numbers, and depending on how things shake out, if a few things go in his way, Marvin Jones is the type of player to have the upside to be an every week wide receiver 3. Alright guys, we're moving into the final player on today's wide receiver list, and the final player in today's video is Mecole Hardman of the Kansas City Chiefs. Mecole Hardman has been a player that a lot of people have looked at in the Kansas City Chiefs offense as a player to potentially break out in his first 2 NFL seasons. Unfortunately, due to the pecking order of targets in that offense, Mecole Hardman really never got a full opportunity to produce and perform in this offense. Famously, Mecole Hardman was drafted back in 2019 as the replacement for Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill at the time of the NFL draft in 2019 was facing some off-field issues. As we all know, the end result, he didn't miss a significant amount of time, so Mecole Hardman wasn't going to get the fast track to NFL production, and unfortunately for all of the Mecole Hardman truthers, he was never really given a massive opportunity at the wide receiver position in this offense. Mecole Hardman's role was mainly on special teams, playing as the team's primary returner, both punting and kick returning. This is where we started to catch glimpses of exactly how talented Mecole Hardman is. An exceptional athlete, of course, standing at 5'10", 187. He runs a 4.33 40, which is in the 99th percentile, but it doesn't end there. He boasts a 75th percentile speed score, 52nd percentile burst score, on top of a 76th percentile agility score. Needless to say, we always wondered what Mecole Hardman can do if given the full reins at the wide receiver position. It was a very similar situation to what we saw with Tyreek Hill when he first burst onto the scene. Tyreek Hill, if you do remember back when he was a rookie, he made most of his production on special teams, scoring multiple times on returns. Many people in year 1 wondering if Tyreek Hill had the chops to be anything more than a returner, if he could produce as a wide receiver, and because he had so much success transitioning from a special teamer over to a wide receiver, it made a lot of us wonder if Mecole Hardman were to take the same path as Tyreek Hill, if he would have the same amount of success. For whatever reason, through Mecole Hardman's first 2 NFL seasons, he really didn't get too much opportunities in the receiving game. Even last season, despite being healthy and available for all 16 games, he only played on 44.5% of snaps. For a player playing on sub 45% of snaps, it's pretty respectable that he was still able to garner 62 targets, converting those into 41 receptions for 560 yards, even scoring 4 times through the air. Now, the big news heading into 2021 and what makes him such a big sleeper and potentially a player who could have a ton of upside going in the later rounds, the big news here obviously is Sammy Watkins is no longer on the team's roster. Sammy Watkins' vacated role is going to open up a massive opportunity share for the other receivers in this offense. Now, I'm not saying right away that Mecole Hardman is guaranteed to see an immediate uptick to 70-80+% snaps. There is still always the chance that Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs do decide to hold back Mecole Hardman and save him for special teams. And if that is the case, then Mecole Hardman is unlikely to see a massive uptick in production. He's unlikely to reward you for taking him late in drafts. But at this point, with Sammy Watkins no longer on the roster, a receiver who played on 76% of snaps last season, Mecole Hardman will have a better shot than he's ever had at potentially cracking the starting lineup for the Kansas City Chiefs. Could you imagine Mecole Hardman, Tyreek Hill, and Travis Kelce lining up as the team's top receivers? The biggest obstacle in the way of making that happen definitely has to come in the form of Demarcus Robinson, who does make a sneaky late round pick himself. But guys, that's gonna do it for this video. We really hope you enjoyed. If you did, how about hitting that like button? If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. We thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.